There was a moment where I realized NLP wasn't wrong. It was just operating at a layer I didn't want to stay in. And that realization didn't come from theory or reading. In fact, I'm a published author, in case you didn't know that. It came from experience, especially after using timeline work enough times to notice something subtle started to shift. Not in my emotions, but in my memory. Brothers, check the show notes, and let's start the podcast. Yo, if you're tired of spinning your wheels in the gym, my man, and if you're also struggling with low energy, lack of results, and feeling invisible to everyone around you, you need to stop trying random workouts, my dude. And also, cut out the cookie cutter diets. Those fail because they never train your mindset first. Click the link in the show notes and start Alpha Body Blueprint today. This is the only system that builds confidence, discipline, and masculine energy, and get the lean, shredded physique you want. You are listening to the Masculine Mindset Show, a podcast for men to develop a backbone, a masculine purpose, if you will, and get more physically attractive, and even become more mentally healthy. All you men listening, I turn nice introverts into fit, self-entitled savages, if you will. And you might even become a little cocky as a result of your G status. More importantly, you guys, I also show you how to flirt and date more women and seal the deal. Just look at the show notes. They are all on my blog articles. Let's get into the content. Okay, brothers, if you've bought 77 Ways to Develop a Masculine Mindset, you read it, you saw me right in there. Yeah, I'm considering NLP as doing like a certification thing. Yeah, you need to hear this podcast because this one is going to really open up your eyes on my different path now, okay? First and foremost, this is not a podcast attacking it. I want to make that clear. This is not a podcast attacking any practitioner either. This is not a podcast taking a shit on that type of work. I want to make that clear to anyone listening, okay? This is a podcast on why I am shifting to shadow work. Now let's go. There was a moment where I realized NLP really wasn't wrong. It was just operating at a layer that I didn't really want to stay in, okay? This is not at all what I wanted. And I'm saying that because I'm going to talk about how I basically over-optimized NLP and made it like I just kind of got exposed to the dark side of NLP. If you read an article on my website recently called The Dark Side of NLP, so you can go read it if you want. But anyhow, let's go. After using timeline work enough times to notice that something subtle really started shifting, okay? Not in my emotions, but in my memory. Before anyone gets defensive, relax, okay? Let me be clear and upfront. I'm not attacking NLP, as I already said, okay? Here are the parts of it that I actually do respect. I respect anchoring. Yes, I do. I respect parts theory or even parts work. I also respect amping up your state using NLP. There's a very good reason why I have a little tip in my hardcover book on how I give the advice to amp up your state, to even get ready to go work out. Okay, that's just an example. You can use NLP for anything, you guys. You can, but it can be also harmful too. I'm going to get to that a little later, but let's keep moving forward. Again, those are solid tools. As I said, I respect these parts of NLP. State change, anchoring, parts theory, okay? This episode is about where I personally drew the line. Because I didn't just dabble in NLP. I went all in. I have a very all or nothing mindset, you guys. If you haven't noticed, just scroll through my podcast library. There's no shortage of them where I go really fucking far. just give you one episode. I'll give you one episode to check out. 10x your masculinity and discover the nice guy syndrome. Yeah, a bit crazy, but anyways. I went too far enough to find the edge. Okay? And once you see the edge of a system like NLP, you have a choice. You either stay there because it's familiar, or you admit to yourself that you don't want to live in that layer anymore. For me, that moment came after doing timeline work. Way too many times, you guys. Not to mention, I was like, actually, I'm being completely serious with you all. I was losing my memory here and there. Like, and it's a true story. Like, people started saying, Adam, you're forgetting shit too much. Like, I would forget people's names. I would forget people's, like, important events like birthdays and whatnot. It's totally true, you guys. I'm not going to go there right now, okay? Let's keep fucking going. I'm not going to explain how each works. No. I'm not going to teach this anymore, as I thought about doing. Those of you who've actually read my book, 77 Ways, you know by now what I said in there. I do give some NLP tricks, okay? Like amping up your state. But, again, like I said, I respect certain parts to NLP, such as state training or even anchoring. Okay, let's go. Here's the point, you guys. After a while, my memory didn't feel healed. It felt edited, but subtly revised. That was the moment it all clicked. Some tools are incredibly good at changing meaning, but changing meaning is not the same thing as integration. Beliefs can shift. The body doesn't. Capacity doesn't. I started to realize I didn't want to live in a mental layer where meaning could be edited faster than the system underneath could actually integrate it. That doesn't make NLP bad. It makes it powerful. And it does work, okay? Power always comes from contrast, but also, you guys, remember, comes with a question of where you choose to stand. For me, certification stopped making sense. Not because of NLP failing, no, but because I didn't want to anchor my work or my identity in that layer. I wanted to do depth, okay? Wanted to do pressure, more confrontation instead of comfort, okay? I'm not going to teach timeline work in this episode. What I'm going to talk about is what happens when belief editing replaces integration, why that line matters, and why it pushed me toward darker, more demanding inner work than most people can really do. If that makes you uncomfortable, good. Stay with me. I'm going to start discussing more shadow work now, you guys. Okay, so, those of you know by now, this is something that I really talk about in my school community, SKOOL, okay? Have my guys do shadow work. Alright, if you want to get in there, click the link, and let's go. Guys, listen to me. I give, like, the best fucking tips that you'll ever get in that community, so let's go. This is where I will cover shadow work, okay? Because once you see the limits of belief editing, the next question is obvious. What actually changes a man when reframing stops working? Okay. Don't get me wrong, you guys. It's good to reframe perspective. I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but it only gets you so far. Especially when you go all in on NLP like I did, okay? I'm gonna keep moving forward on this, okay? This is where NLP and shadow work part ways, alright? NLP works primarily at the level of interpretation. It's about changing how you understand something, how you label it, how you relate to it mentally. Shadow work doesn't start with interpretation. It starts with what you've been avoiding. That's the difference. NLP asks, what does this mean? Basically, like, takes everything and puts meaning to it. You have a new belief and you put meaning to it, right? But shadow work asks, what part of you is still carrying this? Okay? NLP is excellent at helping someone feel different about an experience. I'm not saying it's a bad field, you guys. You just want to make that clear, all right? Shadow work is about integrating the part of you that was shaped by the experience in the first place. And those are not the same thing. Shadow work isn't interested in making things lighter. It's interested in making things real. It doesn't reframe pain. It sits with it. It doesn't edit memory. It asks what the memory did to your identity. And for me, that's where the real work has always been. Because I'm not interested in tools that help someone feel better temporarily. If the patterns keep resurfacing, right? Hope that makes sense to you guys. Especially if they are resurfacing under pressure. Shadow work goes after the pattern itself. It goes to the root, you guys, if you think about it. There is a book called I Am Healing, all right, or something like that, where you start answering self-reflective questions and shit. But honestly, shadow work is more deeper than that too. It's not like, oh, you just do self-reflection. You do more than that. But anyways, shadow work goes after the pattern itself. Okay, it deals with suppressed emotion, unintegrated identity fragments. If that makes sense. You're really attacking who you are behind closed doors. That's really what shadow work is. Who are you when no one is around? That's shadow work, you guys, if you think about it. Your shadow is everything repressed. Bring that to the light, you guys. You should read my article. I would find it. You would get... Guys, listen to me. I have an extremely detailed, peer-reviewed type article that I wrote on shadow work. It's called The Definitive Guide to Shadow Work for Men. Another good article on my website. Guys, I've been writing a lot more mindset articles lately on my website. But anyways, let's keep fucking going. As I said, shadow work goes after the pattern itself. It deals with suppressed emotion. Okay? The parts of a man that learned to survive instead of expressing it. The parts that learned to cope instead of confront. This is why shadow work is my lane. Okay? It doesn't bypass discomfort. It doesn't rush insight. It doesn't offer relief as the goal. It builds capacity. And that's what most systems avoid. I should, rephrase that. That's what most systems avoid. Okay? Capacity to feel without collapsing. Capacity to stay present under pressure. Capacity to hold intensity without needing to explain it away. Belief change without capacity is fragile. Alright? Now, I'm not saying that belief change is bad, you guys. Don't misinterpret me. Okay? It's definitely, it's good to replace bad beliefs, but the whole important point, you guys, is it's basically until life applies force. Okay? That's what I mean here, right? It works until life applies force. Shadow work prepares you for force, okay? That's why it doesn't appeal to everyone. And honestly, it shouldn't. Some people want tools. Some people want relief. Some people want certainty too. Shadow work to me is honesty, okay? You gotta get honest with yourself, you guys. Self-honesty conversations. Massive tip there on developing that masculine mindset. You guys, it's not just always about, kind of amping up your state using NLP, as I discussed in that book. But I will say this. Self-honesty conversations, extremely fucking masculine. Let's be real. When you get real with yourself, that's masculine. When you're getting fake with yourself and you're trying to put up a persona, not masculine. Anyways, shadow work demands responsibility, okay? It demands that you stop editing the story and start integrating the parts of you that the story was protecting. And once you experience that difference, it's very hard to go back. Not because NLP stops working, no, but because you realize it was never meant to carry the entire weight of transformation. It's one layer. Shadow work is the layer underneath all of it, okay? And that's where I chose to live. Now we're going to integrate research-backed shadow work, okay? Now, I want to anchor this in something many people don't bring up in the inner work conversations. Peer-reviewed research. Yes, you guys. This right here is also one of the big reasons I chose to go into shadow work over NLP right here. We're going to hear this now, okay? As I said, if you got my hardcover book, you know what I put in there. But as I said, you guys, I'm not doing this because, I don't like NLP anymore. No, just keep listening. Okay, not the case. All right. As I said, this is not an attack to NLP, so don't take it that way. Anyways, most discussions around things like NLP and personal growth stay at the level of anecdote or technique. Okay. They talk about what feels good or what makes you feel like you've made progress today. But there's an entire body of research showing that real psychological integration, the kind that reduces avoidance, increases emotional regulation, and strengthens identity stability. It doesn't come from surface level belief change. It comes from working through what's been suppressed, not around it. For example, multiple psychological models, from object relations to attachment theory to affect regulation frameworks, point to the same pattern. When emotional material is simply reinterpreted instead of integrated, the nervous system doesn't actually change. The story changes, but the physiological and identity level residue does not. What peer-reviewed studies repeatedly show is this: changes in emotion regulation aren't reliably driven by reframing alone. Meaning-making strategies like those common in belief editing are helpful but insufficient for long-term stability. Integration happens when emotional experiences are acknowledged, embodied, and expressed, not just reinterpreted. And that's exactly what shadow work targets. Whereas belief editing can make something feel manageable, integration makes it neutralized. Not forgotten, not softened, neutralized. Meaning the emotional charge that used to interfere with decisions, presence, connection, and leadership actually dissolves over time. And here's the essential piece most people miss. You can feel good about something and still be unresolved about it. Yeah, you guys. I can speak from experience on that. Belief change makes you feel good for like a brief period of time, right? Integration gives you capacity under pressure. That's why research supports approaches like emotional regulation through exposure and processing, somatic integration of emotional memory, narrative identity work that includes affect tolerance, experiential interventions that encourage confrontation over avoidance. These aren't pop psych concepts. They show up in peer-reviewed literature because they target what actually changes the structure of psychological organization, not just the meaning. If you've ever read studies on trauma, attachment, or affect regulation, you'll see the same theme. Stories we tell about our past only shift our experience if the body and identity can accommodate the shift. And that's where belief editing and reframing hit a wall, and shadow work steps in. Again, not talking shit on NLP. I want to make that clear. The point is, shadow work doesn't stop at meaning. It takes meaning into the body, into the nervous system, into identity, and into behavior, the places where real stability and integration live. Now, you guys, I discussed shadow work versus NLP, my realization on it at the start of the podcast, right? And I covered research-backed shadow work, right? And now, again, check out my article called The Definitive Guide to Shadow Work for Men. Definitely read that if you want to know more about, you can see all the peer-reviewed research on that article. But anyways, let's go. Once you understand that integration requires capacity, not just belief change, there's a natural next layer that almost nobody talks about. And there's a reason for that. Because once shadow work does the job, once suppressed material is integrated, once emotional charge is stabilized, once a man can sit with discomfort without collapsing, something else becomes possible. That's where what I call forbidden ceremonies exist. And before anyone jumps to conclusions, let me be clear. This isn't really about mysticism per se. This is not mysticism whatsoever, okay? Or pretending to be dark for attention, okay, you guys? Forbidden rituals are forbidden for a much simpler reason. They don't offer comfort. They don't explain anything away. They don't soften experience. They don't reframe pain, okay? They don't promise relief, alright? They test identity under pressure. Major tip there, you guys. I actually cover scar ceremonies in my upcoming project. I'll tell you what, fuck. Those scar ceremonies are no joke. Like, they humble you, okay? Believe me, they do. But anyways, most inner work systems are designed to help you feel better. Forbidden rituals are designed to show you who you are when nothing is edited. They operate from belief editing, after insight, after understanding. They exist for people who no longer need reassurance and are willing to face themselves without tools designed to make things easier. This is why most people never go here. Not because it's dangerous, not because it's evil, but because it removes the safety net. No reframes, okay? No, like, visual squash either. For example, this means something empowering. Like, none of that bullshit. Just presence and confrontation and stillness under intensity, right? Shadow work integrates what was avoided. Forbidden rituals asks a different question. Who are you when there's nothing left to integrate? That's not a question most people want answered. And that's why these practices stay on the margins. They're not meant to replace NLP, no. They're not meant to replace shadow work either. They sit beyond them, not better, not superior, just more demanding. And once you understand that difference, the path forward becomes very clear. Some people want tools. Some people want healing. Some people want insight. And some people want to find out what remains when none of that is available anymore. That's the layer I stepped into. And that's the layer most people sense, but never name. Guys, I want to finally announce my upcoming project, okay? Still calling it Project X. No. I'm not going to say the name yet. But I'll make this more understanding to you all. This took all year fucking long to finish. A lot of late nights, a lot of hard work, a lot of even testing these ceremonies. All very powerful, by the way. Bros, listen to me. Have my man Joshua editing this. So shout out to Joshua. Let's give him props right here. This book is 1,000 fucking pages. Like, it's close enough to it. But the point behind that is this, you guys. Now you know what I'm really about to do in my work. My lane is giving you the tools that you can implement and the ceremonies that I've used to basically not only reach ego death. Yes, you guys, there are ceremonies that can basically kill your fucking ego. One involving identity rupture. Yes, it's a very real thing. Some of these rituals, you guys, are some of the most powerful stuff I've ever experienced. So I suggest you keep coming back to my podcast, but let's keep fucking going. I'm going to land this more clearly for you all now, okay? This episode isn't about me walking away from NLP, but really, it's about me choosing where I'm going all in on. Instead, I'm no longer pursuing NLP practitioner certification. Not because NLP is useless, but because the layer I care about now is deeper. I'm going all in on shadow work. That's the lane I'm committing to. That's the work I'm continuing to study, train in, and get certified in. Because it deals with integration, capacity, and identity under pressure, not just belief change. And for the men listening to this, I want to be very clear about something else. Shadow work doesn't exist in a vacuum. Your psychology doesn't live in your head alone. It lives in your body, your posture, your nervous system. your ability to tolerate stress and stay present, which is why I don't just talk about inner work. I'm a personal trainer too, okay? I have to remind you all that. I know you're like, oh, here we go. Adam plugging that shit. Guys, listen to me. I don't give a fuck. I've done that for years. Fitness is in my blood. It's in my identity. It's who I am before I even studied all this. So check the show notes. Join the damn 14-day challenge and stop even giving me excuses about it. Because fitness is the gateway to discipline, if you've heard my earlier episodes, okay? Now, 14-day challenge is not a motivational reset. No. It's not a feel-good program either. Nope. It's a structured way to rebuild discipline, embodiment, and follow through. The exact traits shadow work actually requires. If you're serious about changing patterns, instead of just understanding them, that's where you start. You don't need to agree with everything I said in this episode. You don't even need to like it. If you don't like it, no worries, you guys. You can find different podcasts. But if something in this episode hit, if you felt that belief editing isn't the same as integration, if you've sensed that there's a deeper layer you haven't stepped into yet, then stay with this work. Because the path forward isn't about collecting more tools. It's about choosing depth you're willing to live in. And I'll see the ones who are really ready on the other side. Brothers, I'm actually having one of my buddies going through my book. He used to work for Jason Capital. Shout out to Zach Zeller. You can check out my earlier episodes where I interviewed him. That aside, you guys, do me a favor and leave me a 5-star review. I love you. Peace the fuck out. Next podcast, you guys, is back to my wheelhouse. Guys, listen to me. Forbidden rituals is my lane now. Okay? It is. I do have some NLP stuff in my hardcover book, like amping up your states, stuff like that. But that aside now, that's like one small tip on that. But again, I'm not doing that as a practitioner certification, as you know, after this podcast. Remember, fitness is in my blood though, and it'll always be in my blood till the day I die. So get into that damn 14-day challenge right now, because I have people in there, and you will crush it if you just fucking trust yourself, as I recently discussed last Thursday. Peace out, you guys.